Every summer it's the same story. You get your corn in the ground, water it, put down your fertilizer, and by August you're standing there staring at stalks that barely reach your shoulder. The ears are small, half of them didn't fill out, and you're left scratching your head wondering what went wrong. I lived that reality for close to 2 decades. And then I started paying close attention to what my neighbor down the road was doing. He's an older gentleman whose family has worked the same land for generations. No bags of fertilizer, no synthetic chemicals of any kind. His stalks tower over mine by 2, sometimes 3 feet, thick, dark green, loaded with full, heavy ears. I finally got up the nerve to walk over and ask what he was doing that I wasn't. What he told me was simple enough that it almost didn't land at first. He said, "You're trying to feed the plant. I'm feeding the soil. That's the difference." That one sentence turned my whole approach upside down. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what he taught me. We'll cover how to build your soil months before a seed goes in the ground, the planting layout most home gardeners have never tried, a timing method that has nothing to do with the calendar, and I'll finish with a simple compost tea recipe I've been using for 3 years that made a bigger difference than I expected. Let's start with the foundation, because if you skip this part, nothing else I'm about to share will perform the way it should. I'm talking about the soil. Now, I know everyone says soil matters, but here's where this approach is different from what most of us were taught. Most gardeners treat soil like a container. You put your seeds in, add some fertilizer for a boost, and hope the weather works out. My neighbor doesn't think about it that way at all. He treats the soil like a living system that has to be built and maintained over time. He told me his grandfather used to say the corn will only grow as deep and as strong as the soil beneath it. Once I understood what that meant in practice, everything changed. In the fall, the season before you plan to grow corn, you start building your bed. You spread a layer of aged manure. And aged is the key word here. This is manure that's been composted and broken down for at least 6 months, ideally a full year. Fresh manure will burn your plants. It's too hot, too much nitrogen hitting at once. Aged manure is dark, crumbly, and smells like earth, not like a barn. Spread it about 4 to 6 inches deep over your corn bed. On top of that, layer another 4 to 6 inches of finished compost, leaf mold, broken down kitchen scraps, whatever you've built up in your pile. You're aiming for a combined 8 to 12 inches of rich organic material sitting on top of your existing soil. Then leave it through the winter. The freeze-thaw cycles break it down further. Earthworms move through it. The microbial life in the soil starts integrating all that organic matter into the system. By spring, when you push your hands into that bed, it should be nearly black. It should crumble in your fingers. It should smell clean and alive. That's what you're building toward. I'll be upfront with you. If this is your first year doing this, your results won't match someone who's been layering compost for a decade. But even in that first season, the improvement is real. My first year following this approach, my corn was noticeably taller, and the ears were fuller than anything I'd grown with synthetic fertilizer. And it gets better every year as the soil biology compounds. If you don't have access to aged manure from a farm, bagged composted cow or chicken manure from your garden center works fine. It's not quite the same as straight from the farm material, but it does the job. The key is the depth and the richness of that organic layer. Don't go thin on it. Corn is one of the heaviest feeders in the garden, and if you want tall, productive stalks, you have to give them something deep and rich to grow into. Now here's where this approach takes a turn from what most of us were taught. When do you actually plant? If you're like I was, you go by the calendar. You look up your last frost date, count forward a couple of weeks, and put your seeds in. That's what the seed packet says, and that's what I did for years. But my neighbor has never once looked at a calendar to decide when to plant. He looks at the soil. The principle behind this is one of the most practical things I've ever learned about growing food. You don't plant by the date. You plant by the soil temperature. Corn needs warm ground to germinate properly. Put it in cold, wet soil, and it just sits there. It rots or germinates so slowly, it comes up weak and never fully recovers. What you're looking for is soil that's reached 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit at 2 inches deep. That's the sweet spot. A soil thermometer costs a few dollars at any garden center. Push it 2 inches into your bed first thing in the morning. That's when soil is at its coolest. If it reads 60 degrees or above for 3 or 4 mornings in a row, you're ready. In most zones, 5 through 8, This falls roughly 2 to 3 weeks after your last frost date. But the exact timing shifts every year based on the spring you're having. Some years that's early May. Some years it's the last week of May. The calendar can't tell you that. The thermometer can. My neighbor always said the ground will let you know when it's ready. You just have to check. In zones 3 and 4, your window is shorter and the soil takes longer to warm up. Pick an early maturing variety in the 70 to 85-day range and wait for that temperature reading even when it feels late. You'll lose more time recovering from a weak start than you'd lose by waiting an extra week. In zones 8 and 9, your soil warms early and you can often squeeze in 2 plantings. Just make sure the second one has enough warm days to mature before fall closes in. Here's the change that made the single biggest visible difference in my corn, and it's one most home gardeners have never tried. It's the planting layout. Almost everyone plants in rows. 1, 2, maybe 3 if they have space. That's what commercial fields look like and what the seed packet diagrams show. But my neighbor plants in blocks, and once you understand why, you won't go back to rows. Corn is pollinated by wind, not insects. The tassels at the top of each stalk release pollen that has to fall down and land on the silks of the ears below. Every single silk strand connects to one kernel. If a strand doesn't receive pollen, that kernel doesn't develop. That's why you end up with ears that have bare patches and gaps. It's not disease, it's not pests, it's poor pollination. When you plant in long, narrow rows, most of the pollen drifts sideways out of your planting and off into the yard. You lose the bulk of it. When you plant in a block, at least 4 rows wide by 4 rows deep, the pollen falls into the block itself. Plants catch each other's pollen. Ears fill out completely, end to end, every kernel developed. My neighbor's beds are always square or close to it, never long and narrow. His ears are full every time. Space your rows at 30 inches apart, seeds 8 to 12 inches apart within each row. 8 inches gives you a tighter canopy that shades weeds and holds moisture and works best in deeply composted soil. 12 inches gives each plant more room and is better if your soil is still in the early stages of building. A 4x4 is your minimum, but 6x6 or 8x8 delivers even better pollination results. The first year I switched to block planting, every ear was solid. No gaps, no bare patches, same seed, same garden, just a different layout. That's when I really understood that a lot of this comes down to how you think about the setup, not what you're buying. Now, what you've done before planting is the foundation, but corn doesn't stop needing attention once it's in the ground. Around 4 to 6 weeks after emergence, when stalks are roughly knee-high, the plant shifts into its fastest growth phase and pulls nitrogen harder than almost any other time. Most gardeners reach for synthetic fertilizer here. I did for years, but my neighbor side dresses with aged composted manure during the growing season, not just before planting. Side dressing means applying fertilizer alongside actively growing plants. When your corn hits knee height, ring each stalk with composted manure about 6 inches out from the base, 2 inches thick, then work it lightly into the top inch of soil and water it in well. Synthetic fertilizer hits the soil like a spike. The plant gets a burst of nitrogen, uses what it can, and the rest washes away. Composted manure releases slowly over weeks as soil biology breaks it down. No spike and crash, just a steady, sustained supply right through that critical growth window. Combined with your fall prep, it's a complete system, rather than a single trick. One last habit I picked up from my neighbor that I think is deeply underrated: the morning walk. Every day, he spends about 10 minutes walking through his corn, not to spray or weed specifically, just to observe. He checks the color of the leaves. Lower leaves yellowing means soil nitrogen is running low. He looks at whether the stalks are leaning, whether the tassels are coming in evenly. He presses his fingers into the soil to feel moisture. It takes 10 minutes. I started doing this 5 years ago and felt a bit silly at first. But within a week, I understood the point. When you walk your corn every day, you catch a color change 3 days before it becomes a real problem. You find 5 beetles before they become 500. You feel soil drying before the plants start to wilt. It shifts you from reacting to getting ahead. Your corn is always communicating what it needs. The morning walk is just making sure you're paying attention. Now, here's the bonus I mentioned at the start. About 3 years ago, my neighbor showed me a simple compost tea he uses as a foliar feed during that active growth phase. I wasn't expecting it to matter much. I was wrong. Fill a 5-gallon bucket 1/3 full with finished compost. Fill the rest with water. Rainwater is best since chlorine in tap water can knock back the beneficial microbes you're trying to grow. If tap water is all you have, leave it uncovered for 24 hours first so the chlorine dissipates. Stir it a few times a day and let it steep for 3 days. Then strain the solids out through an old burlap sack or a piece of window screen. What's left is a dark liquid loaded with beneficial microorganisms and water-soluble nutrients. Apply it with a watering can or pump sprayer to the leaves and the base of the stalks in the early morning before the sun gets high. Do this every 2 weeks during active growth. The first thing I noticed was the leaf color, noticeably deeper green within a few days. The ears that season were the biggest I'd ever grown. You're delivering a concentrated dose of microbial life and trace nutrients directly through the leaves, supplementing what the roots are pulling from below. It seems almost too simple to make a real difference, but once you understand what's actually in that liquid, it makes complete sense. Give it a try this season. So here's the full picture. Build your soil in the fall with deep layers of aged manure and finished compost, and let it work through winter. Plant by soil temperature using a thermometer, not by the date on the calendar. Lay your corn in a block rather than rows, so pollination does what it's supposed to do. Side dress with composted manure at the knee-high stage to keep feeding steady through active growth. Walk your corn every morning to stay ahead of problems before they take hold. And brew a simple compost tea to give your plants a foliar boost when they need it most. None of this is complicated. None of it requires expensive inputs. It's a system built on understanding how soil and plant work together, passed down through people who had to get it right every single season. I've been using these methods for close to a decade, and the results improve every year as the soil builds on itself. Start this fall and see what a difference it makes by next summer. If you've got your own tried and true methods, drop them in the comments. I genuinely love to hear what's working out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.